pleasure, and thank you so much for joining me today, Paul.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you for the invite to come onto the show and share some experiences and hopefully a wee bit of knowledge as well.
Oh, thank you. Since lockdown, you've managed to get out fishing. What's it been like?
Yeah, well, obviously there was a lot of anticipation and it was just amazing. It was amazing to get back out there. It really was. Felt a little bit out of touch. Usually I've got my finger on the pulse in terms of fly hatches and things like that. And was a little bit strange just turning up and kind of starting all over again, really.
And you've actually been, the reason we're recording this is because this evening you are going to be going out, because give us a feeling how the river's fishing at the moment.
Okay, well, we're pretty much on the cusp. As you know, it was the longest day, summer solstice, a couple of days back. So we're on the cusp of evening hatches taking precedence over daytime hatches. So everything's tending to happen in the evening just now. Obviously, if you get a few sort of cloudy days or wet, rainy days or a bit of a lift in water levels, and chances are you'll pick up some daytime fishing, but we're definitely gearing up for evening time on the river.
And you've caught some absolutely gorgeous fish. And for everybody who's watching this, do give Paul a follow on his Instagram account, because those photographs on your Instagram account, which is Paul Procter Fly Fish, are just fabulous.
Yeah, thanks. Well, it's just you know, you've got to put the legwork in and the effort. That's all there is to it, really. There's no secret, and fortunately, I've got a lot of time to invest into that at the moment.
And also as well is that 4 days ago I've just picked this up on your Instagram there, after a heavy stint of rain, bumper crop of blue-winged olives, and then you're getting some iron blue duns, which are late, aren't they?
Yeah, we're right into the blue-winged olive, or BWO, season just now. They started about a month ago for us, and they'll continue on and off, weather dependent. I mean, we get them right into October as well. The best hatches will occur sort of late June, July, early August. But the iron blues were, they're like foul weather, and it was a particularly sort of wet, windy, squally day, and totally unexpected. This was 5 days ago, I think, and very surprised. I had to photograph them, which you see a photograph, because if you go out and say, hey, guess what, there's iron blue tons about, everybody will say, oh no, you're talking absolute tosh, you know, things like that. So yeah, they're exceptionally late. Usually iron blues we'll expect roundabout from the 20th of April through the early part and into late May. But again, that's dependent on geographic location. If you go down south, for example, their hatches are leading ours by about 2 weeks, and then when I head up into Scotland, again they're lagging us by approximately 2 weeks. So that span is quite a broad sort of window. Wouldn't it be a lovely world if you could just drive south and fish the hatch gradually north for a month?
Oh yes, and also as well, Paul, is what flies would you use for anybody who's watching this, who's new to trout fishing and river fishing in particular? What kind of flies would you use to imitate that?
Right. Okay. It's quite. It's a good question, that, Anne. It's quite a complex one to answer in a sort of short time frame. However, quick answer is obviously it's nice to post big fish, but equally I like to be a little bit more sort of educational, if you want to call it that, by posting certain insects I see so people can get a grasp what they look like, and also the flies that I'm using as well. At the moment, with the evening hatches, I'm a big fan of CDC flies, which we know is an abbreviation for cul de canard, which roughly translated from French is the duck's backside or the duck's rear end, and it's the preen gland feather. And these particular flies tied using CDC, they just look so realistic, and they land like thistledown as well. However, natural CDC is quite dark in colour, so come the evening time, they're that little bit more difficult to see. So we're using flies in the evening that have very sort of high visibility wings or posts on them, typically parachute patterns or clink hammers, and I'm using the fluorescent polyyarn for the wing post, and it stands out really well as the light fades. It gains you about an extra 20-30 minutes, believe it or not.
And I know there was a question that Eastercaster, that's what he called himself, because last week you actually did a Q&A for Farlow's. Everybody check out the Farlow's website on Facebook and you'll be able to see it because it was really, really informative. But Eastercaster said, for your 10-foot 4-weight rod, what line taper do you prefer?
Line taper, if he's referring to fly line, I prefer weight forward lines these days. Two lines I use. One is the Scientific Anglers trout line, which aren't massively expensive. Fly lines are getting up to 80-90 pounds these days. As a consumable piece of kit, that's quite expensive. So I do like the SA, which is Scientific Anglers trout. But also the Barrior, Mike Barrior's doing some fabulous lines, the GT90, and they're coming at a very attractive price point as well. But it's definitely a weight forward, if that's what he's referring to. I'm not. Is that you've read it as you've seen it there, and it doesn't say safer or tippet or leader or anything like that? It just says what line.
No, but we have Ben Beckwith. He did say, what's the best tippet and leader setup for targeting trophy trout? Because I fished with you on one occasion and my Apple Watch actually said I was running. I'm currently doing a John O'Groats to Land's End, and my Apple Watch has yet to tell me that I'm actually running. But with fishing with you, Paul, I was running. So...
We're not going that fast, Anne. We were covering ground because the hatch had started, so I was quite eager to get us into the picture.
But covering trophy trout, because you only really cover big fish.
Yeah. I don't want that to sound like I've got my head up my backside or anything. It's kind of what floats my boat. I was discussing it with a good friend the other day, and everybody's different. And I totally get it. I'm lucky I live in a place that gives me instant access to that, and I have the time to invest into sitting out or finding big trout. But I mean, the flip side of it is, Anne, you can walk all day, and I have done, and I've done it this season, and you don't make a cast. So there's pros and cons to every scenario, but it's just what does it for me. But I don't want to, by the same token, I don't want to sort of not trying to put that message out that this makes me any better than anybody else. I just really enjoy pursuing, sizable or impressive wild brown trout. I still get the shakes on when I'm casting at them. So, that's a good thing in my eyes. That's a good thing.
And when you're walking along the riverbank, how do you know that's a big trout that's actually feeding as well? For anybody that wants to go and focus on these big fish, how can you tell that that's a big fish?
Sometimes you can see them even on our waters. We're not blessed like with the clarity of chalk streams, but we get periods quite recently with all the hot weather. The sediment drops out of the water as it gets lower and lower. So consequently, the rivers are clear, and you can actually sight fish or polarize them or polaroid them, as we tend to call it. However, outside of that, and in the evening, obviously, you haven't got the sun high up above you or anything, so you haven't got that luxury of being able to see into the water. So you've just got to watch the rise form, and that in itself is an ever-involving skill. It's not a given. I have slipped up many times. I've cast at fish that I thought maybe a pound and a half, 2 pound, and it turned out to be really great whoppers, And by the same token, I've cast at fish in certain places that I think this will be a good fish, and it's turned out to be a lot smaller than I anticipated. But as a general rule, a little bit of guidance. I'd just take your time, don't rush at the fish, sit down and watch it for a wee while. If you're lower down, you tend to get a better angle. Fish that are feeding on fly right on the surface, for example, newly emerged duns, the snout will come right through the surface, if that's the surface. So you can get a good gauge by seeing the jawline on a fish. Also, you get that distinctive, where I was saying this on fallows, that nice sort of slurping noise that big trout make. Sort of makes you stand to attention, you're on point. So they're two very good pointers. The third one would probably be where the fish is stationed. Bigger fish tend to not generally stray too far from cover or structure for obvious reasons. They get hidden away tight in little places, dark corners and things like that. That will usually indicate that potentially that could be a better fish. The smaller fish are a little bit more sociable, enjoy each other's company and find safety with each other. And you can find them more in the open water midstream and things like that. Again, this is just a generalization. I found a big fish the other day that was sat right out in the middle of the pool, and I could see from his snout it was a nice fish, but I didn't quite expect it to be as good as what it was. And afterwards I thought, my God, what was that fish doing sat there feeding like that? The obvious answer is that where the greatest concentration of food was, and on that given day, with the river level rising, the fly were getting filtered right down the centre of the river.
Would you recommend a really good pair of sunglasses?
The best for me, I've used quite a few different types, but the best for me are the Costa sunglasses. Admittedly, they're a little bit more expensive, but they design lenses specifically for fishing. I tend to shy away from the mirror finish ones, actually. I've just written an article about this, and reason they're very popular with saltwater anglers. It's funky and cool and things like that, but you get a little bit of glare or reflection off them, and that could be, call me paranoid, that could be enough to potentially spook your quarry. Certainly where you're talking about trout at close quarters, often you're 30, 40 feet away from your target when you're casting at them. So the lens I like just like an amber lens for general use and bright days, and they do a sunrise or a yellow lens for low light evening fishing and really cloudy days.
Yeah, and two pairs, one for day, one for evening fishing. It really does make a difference from the viewing on the river, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and anglers, a lot of the tackle shops are actually they are stocking Costas, are actually I've got a sale on at the moment. So so do shop around because you might be able to pick up a pair at a very, very good price. Talking about locations, you are based in Cumbria. It does have some beautiful fishing and also affordable fishing as well, Paul. Tell us a little bit about your local angling club, because again, you can buy day permits for that, can't you?
Yeah, local's a difficult one, Anne, because I'm in several clubs. As a good friend of mine says, you've got more clubs than Arnold Palmer. Those of you remember Arnold Palmer, the golfer, So, a lot of my fishing does take place in Cumbria and surrounding areas. I obviously go into Yorkshire a fair bit, which borders onto Cumbria. But we've got very affordable fishing. A lot of the clubs, a lot of the associations, if I name a few, there's Penrith Anglers, which I'm a member, Appleby Anglers, there's Kirby Stephen Anglers, there's T-Bay Anglers on the Loon. There's 4 clubs, and all of those do day tickets. And you're looking at anywhere from, in the region, probably the cheapest day tickets we've got, I think, are in Yorkshire, and we bit more now because I'm a member of the club, but not that many years ago, you could get a day ticket for £3, £3.
You can still get them for
unbelievable.
You can still get them for £5 and £10. You know, Scottish Borders. There's, because I know when Scotland opens to everybody else, you go to the Annan, you're going up to the Don. Lord, I think the Don is a hidden gem. I think the Devron is, well, absolutely beautiful. And also, as well as that, if you get the opportunity, the Spey, because I know you've caught some nice fish on the Spey, haven't you?
Yeah, the Spey is obviously traditionally a salmon river. I hesitated there, nearly said salmon. I like to say it like the Scandinavians because everybody wants to correct me and say, no, Paul, it's salmon, you know, as we say it here. Just one of my wicked sort of mischievous ways, you know. Anyway, yeah, it's traditionally a salmon river, and it's got some cracking trout in, and it's still sort of still don't get it because people sort of say, oh, salmon and trout, you know, can't really get on and blah blah blah, but they've coexisted long before the mucky hand of man came along. It's principally the reason for, you know, it's not rocket science. Fish are on the decline, namely salmon and trout for that matter. Is as I said on the Farlow's interview, it's death by 1,000 cuts. There's a lot of things happening. There's pollution, there's water abstraction, there's loss of habitat, there's predators to cope with, you know, and things like that. Namely, we can, you know, when salmon are going out to sea, they've got to run the gauntlet with dolphins, with porpoise, with seals, and you've got cormorants, you've got all these things. And I'm not pointing the finger, you know, it's just the way of the world. But that's principally what's happening. It's death by 1,000 cuts for those species, unfortunately, at the moment.
And you've recently become a vice president of the Salmon and Trout Conservation. Congratulations on that.
Thank you. Thank you.
And again, the great work that they are doing on the water abstraction, literally everything that the Salmon and Trout Conservation do, they're covering everything, aren't they?
Yeah, they're pretty good. I mean, to be fair, they've got their act together, and it's quite, you know, I feel quite privileged and very proud to be invited to be one of the vice presidents, as I was with the Wild Trout Trust as well. But yeah, fair play to salmon and trout conservation. These days, they're looking very closely and linking everything to insects and working with the Riverfly Partnership, who Warren mentioned as well. You know, the data they're gathering now gives us a bit of a datum whether fly life's increasing, declining on certain rivers and things like that. Here's something strange as well, Anne. Several of us, and how you can link it to lockdown, I'm unsure, because you wouldn't think it would have an immediate impact or effect, is that fly hatches seem to be very good this year for some reason. But they are cyclical. It just could be one of them years where we're enjoying quite good hatches overall.
Do you think it's because we've got less fumes going into the environment? Because it was interesting. I was chatting to a lady and she said to me, she says, we've got birds in our front garden next to the road and we've never had them there. And I think wildlife is coming into the towns and it's making a difference.
Yeah, everything's a lot. Well, obviously with lockdown, everything was undisturbed, if you like. So wildlife will encroach on there. I mean, it's like, you know, I can draw the comparison to trout fishing. If you're out early in the morning, which I'm doing at this time of year as well, is trout have been left alone for 12, 14 hours overnight. And their natural hunting ground is often quite, or surprisingly, shallow water. And you'll find them right in the margins at first light. It's only the human presence and such like that pushes them out into deeper water during the day. But again, going back to it, one thing that has, if you think, everybody, I often include this in my talks, and you just bear with me, I'm going off on a tangent, but you think how many insects are killed per day by the amount of vehicles we've got on our road. I forget the exact figure, it's on one of my slides, so I've got the luxury of being able to forget it because you just press a button and the figure comes up X amount of million. But I think it was something like, don't quote me on this, way back in the 1960s, there was something like 5 million cars on our roads, and now it's something ridiculous like 50 million. That is, you know, all them cars up and down the roads, and we've got faster roads now. Imagine how many little bugs are being killed on the windscreens and things like that. You know, when you add it up, it's truly frightening. And I noticed after lockdown, you know, driving out, suddenly my windscreen was absolutely littered with splats of unfortunate little insects. You know, that again, we were talking about this in previous years. Some of us noticed a decline in that, but it just shows you that you know, how quick nature can sort of switch it round or revert, given an opportunity.
Well, Paul, this week with the weather pattern that's coming in, what would you recommend to people who want to go trout fishing this week? What kind of flies would you recommend?
You're talking about this heat wave, yeah? This heat wave keeps threatening. Apparently, I've looked at the weather. We've got it. It's cloudy here today and quite windy. But later today, the sun's going to come out. Apparently, it's going to stay like that for the foreseeable future. So I would guess our rivers have had a touch of fresh water in, so I'm dashing off shortly to fish, as you know. I would probably anticipate it'll be evening or early morning, and typical flies, well, the naturals we expect to see would be blue-winged olives that we've touched on, also caddis or sedge. So again, the paraduster that I've been using, I think that's popped that out in a post quite recently, Anne. And the likes of an Elk-Air caddis, that'll form the cornerstone of my fishing in the very near future. And given we're just off the back of the longest day and how far further north we live, where, you know, the other evening I was on the river till sort of 10 to 12 at night. Sometimes on the local river, which isn't too far away, I'm not going out till 10 o'clock in the evening. On them really stinking hot days, I don't bother going out till 10 o'clock. And all that activity gets sort of condensed into a very sort of frantic 1 hour or something like that. You know, it's magic.
Well, huge thank you for coming on. Our first Take Me Fishing show. Will you come back? Because I know once lockdown in Scotland and more Scottish fishing is open, I know you'll be edging to get yourself up there, won't you?
Yeah, increasingly. Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for the invite, but absolutely, as more places become available or online, it's going to be increasingly difficult to pin me down, I suppose. But yeah, I'd love to come back, Anne, and chat a wee bit more. That'd be great. Thank you.
And internationally, what's the thoughts about going internationally? Because you love traveling the globe, don't you?
Yeah, actually, I should be in Iceland just now. So anyway, we'll park that one. That's a bit of a sore point. Who knows? I mean, we're still getting new news every day, or sort of not groundbreaking, but a different slant on COVID-19 and the pandemic and things like that. So things are moving quite quickly, you know. I think we've just got to sit back and see what happens. I'd be keen to travel, but then again, you know, at what cost? You don't want to sort of go too soon and then another outbreak occurs, and then you think, my God, you know, am I in my tiny little way responsible for that kind of thing? So who knows? We'll just have to see, won't we?
Paul, I love your Instagram account. Please tell everybody the Instagram address before you go.
That, you've put me on the spot. There's one question I can't answer. I don't know it. Is it Paul Procter Fly Fish or Fly Fishing or something like that? Yeah, okay. Sorry.
It's Paul Procter Fly Fish. You are a shocker.
I know. Sorry. Well, it's all this thing with passwords and things like that. You forget them very quickly, don't you? So
put everything in. But everybody, Paul Procter Fly Fish on Instagram, do go and give it a like, because the photos that you produce, Paul, you are an expert at taking these photos, and thank you so much, because they are beautiful, beautiful fish. Thank you so much, Paul Procter, and see you soon.
Yeah, thanks, Anne. Enjoy the rest of the show. Thank you very much. Take care, everybody. Bye.